You thought Baby Boy was just a hood classic about cheating, drama, and bad decisions? Nah, it was a raw, uncomfortable look at how broken men, broken homes, and broken money cycles keep the black family stuck. This film wasn't just entertainment, it was a warning. Jodie isn't just one character, he's a reflection of thousands of men caught between boyhood and manhood, love and ego, survival and strategy. In this breakdown, we're going deep, from Jodie's emotional immaturity to Yvette's unappreciated strength to the economic traps no one talks about. Every character represents a choice and a lesson. If you've ever wanted to understand how generational cycles get passed down, and more importantly, how we break them, stay locked in. Because Baby Boy didn't just show us what's broken, it gave us the blueprint to build something better. Let's break it down. Let's start with Jodie, because Baby Boy is his story, but it's also the story of too many grown men still living like boys. He's in his 20s, has 2 kids with 2 different women, and still lives under his mother's roof. But more than just his living situation, it's his mindset that defines him. Jodie is charming, he's smooth, he knows what to say to get himself out of trouble, especially with women. But behind all of that, he's terrified not of the streets, but of growing up. Deep down, he's a grown boy in a man's world, and that internal conflict drives everything he does. Instead of creating stability for his family, Jodie clings to comfort. He wants the benefits of adulthood, sex, fatherhood, freedom, without accepting the responsibilities that come with it. He refuses to get a real job, chooses hustling over planning, and manipulates the people who love him. And worst of all, he sees nothing wrong with it. Now pause right there, because some of you watching either know a Jodie or have been a Jodie. The one who has potential but no plan. The one who says he's got it under control but has no direction. The one who loves his family but is too emotionally immature to actually lead them. What Baby Boy does brilliantly is show how emotional immaturity can destroy black families. Jodie loves Ivette, but he cheats on her, lies to her, and gaslights her when she confronts him. He plays the victim when he's held accountable, and he lashes out when he's afraid. This is the kind of manhood many of us were raised to accept. As long as he provides something, he gets a pass for everything. But providing isn't just about money, it's about safety, direction, and consistency. And Jodie, despite his potential, provides none of that. There's a powerful scene where Jodie tries to explain to his mother why he still lives at home. He says, "I'm just trying to get my life together." But that excuse is tired. He's not getting his life together. He's hiding from it. And his mother, fed up, reminds him, "You're not a baby anymore. You're a grown-ass man." That moment cuts deep because it speaks to the heart of the issue. Responsibility delayed is legacy denied. Every day, Jodie avoids accountability. He sets his children up to repeat his same cycle. Every time he dodges growth, he breaks the family code, the unspoken promise to make life easier for the next generation. But here's the truth. Jodie isn't beyond saving. He's just stuck. And if you're watching this and see parts of yourself in him, the fear, the avoidance, the ego, it's not too late. But you have to choose growth over comfort. Jodie's story is uncomfortable because it's too familiar. But that's what makes it powerful. He's not a villain, he's a mirror. And the sooner we stop excusing the behavior he represents, the sooner we start building something worth passing down. Now, let's talk about Ivette, the one holding it all together while barely holding on. In Baby Boy, she's more than just Jodie's girlfriend or the mother of his child. She's the foundation, the provider, the protector, the emotional punching bag, and in many ways, the backbone of the story. While Jodie drifts through life without a plan, Ivette is working a full-time job, raising their son, managing the bills, and still coming home to care for Jodie, who gives her nothing but lies, manipulation, and disrespect in return. And if you're a black woman watching this, or someone raised by one, you've seen this story play out in real life. Ivette represents the black woman who does everything, not because she wants to, but because she has to. She's not in survival mode because of bad choices. She's in it because she's covering for someone who refuses to show up. She believes in love, but she's been crushed by the weight of carrying that love alone. Most painful part, she's loyal to someone who hasn't earned it. She gives Jodie chance after chance, hoping he'll grow up, and each time he fails her, cheating, lying, gaslighting, she bends a little more, but eventually we all break. There's a scene where Ivette pleads with Jodie to step up, not just as a man, but as a partner, and he mocks her, he flips it back on her. That's emotional manipulation, and it's a tool too many women have had used against them. Baby Boy doesn't hide from this, it puts it front and center. Because here's the truth. Love without partnership is emotional labor. And emotional labor without support becomes emotional damage. It's not enough to say you love someone. If you're not showing up, sharing the load, contributing to the vision, then love turns into a trap. Ivette is more than just a symbol of strength. She's a symbol of imbalance. She's what happens when one person in the relationship is building and the other is draining. And in our communities, this imbalance doesn't just hurt relationships, it stalls wealth building. Think about it. How can you build a legacy when one person is pulling double weight while the other is playing victim? How can you create generational success when the foundation is cracked by mistrust and disrespect? Many of you watching are either in Yvette's shoes or were raised by someone who was a mother who sacrificed everything while a man took everything, a woman who stayed because she saw potential even when the reality was pain. Baby boy uses Yvette to make something painfully clear. Black women have been carrying the emotional, financial, and psychological weight of the household for too long. And that's not a badge of honor, that's a warning. If we want to build wealth, legacy, and real love in our communities, partnership has to be equal. Not perfect, but intentional. Not one-sided, but collaborative. Red deserved better, and so do the women watching this. Love isn't supposed to hurt more than it helps, and if it's not building you, it's breaking you. So far, we've seen how Baby Boy exposes the immaturity of Jodie and the emotional burden Ivette carries. But there's another dynamic in the house that tells a whole different story, the one between Jodie's mum, Juanita, and her man, Melvin. Juanita is a woman who's been through it. She's raised kids, probably worked multiple jobs, and now finally she wants peace. She wants to enjoy her life, focus on herself, and build something steady with a man who's bringing structure instead of stress. That man is Melvin, but Jodie can't handle it. Why? Because Melvin represents everything Jodie refuses to become: disciplined, mature, and unapologetically grown. Melvin has a past, no doubt, he's made mistakes, but what makes him different is that he learned from them. He's not trying to be the cool guy, the playboy, or the alpha. He's focused on stability, he's calm, he's grounded. He's the kind of man Juanita deserves, and the kind of man Jodie fears becoming. Let's be real, Jodie doesn't just dislike Melvin, he resents him. Because when you've been the man of the house by default for so long, it's hard to accept when a real man shows up. Melvin doesn't have to yell to be respected. He doesn't need to flex to feel powerful. He just moves with quiet authority, and that threatens Jodie's fragile ego. But here's the part a lot of people miss. This tension isn't just about pride, it's about change. Juanita is ready to grow. She wants more for herself. She loves her son, but she's done raising him. And that's a boundary many mothers struggle with, especially in our communities. Loving your son doesn't mean babying him forever. At some point, you've got to let him fall so he can rise. Melvin is the embodiment of structure. He moves like a man who's seen what happens when you live without it. That moment when he confronts Jodie in the kitchen, it's intense, not because Melvin is being aggressive, but because he's drawing a line. He's not here to fight Jodie, he's here to protect peace. And peace always threatens chaos. Many of you watching this know exactly what that shift feels like when your mum started prioritizing her joy. When a stepfather came in and you didn't know your place anymore. When structure felt like punishment because you were raised in survival mode. But here's the truth, growth means giving up comfort for structure. Jodie's mom is finally choosing herself. She's choosing a man who brings order, not confusion. And that's a necessary part of breaking cycles, because if you don't restructure the home, you can't rebuild a legacy. The clash between Jodie and Melvin isn't just personal, it's generational. It's the unhealed trauma of young black men who were never taught what real manhood looks like. Finally confronting someone who figured it out the hard way. Melvin doesn't just represent an older man. He represents what's possible when you stop blaming the world and start building within it. And for the women watching, maybe you're Juanita. You've done enough, you've raised sons, carried burdens, and now you're ready to be loved without labor. That's not selfish, that's overdue. To the men watching, maybe you're at the point where you have to decide. Are you going to keep clashing with the Melvins of the world, or are you going to become one? Because real growth isn't about ego, it's about structure, humility, and peace. So when Juanita chooses Melvin, she's not choosing a man over her son, she's choosing her healing over her history, and that's a choice more people need to make. And structure isn't the enemy, it's the beginning of freedom. By the time Rodney enters the picture in Baby Boy, the movie has already laid out its emotional groundwork. We've seen Jodie's arrested development, Ivette's emotional labor, and the tension between old school structure and new school pride. But when Rodney comes home from prison, the temperature shifts, the stakes go up, and the truth gets uglier. Rodney is the physical manifestation of street trauma, hardened by prison, fueled by control, and completely disconnected from love or empathy. He doesn't come back to rebuild a family, he comes back to reclaim territory, like the streets taught him to. In his eyes, Ivette and her son aren't people to protect, they're possessions to control. And that's where the lesson begins. Rodney's the product of a system that teaches men to dominate instead of nurture, to intimidate instead of support. Everything about him, his tone, his posture, his presence, screams toxic masculinity. He's aggressive not because he's strong, but because he's afraid. Afraid to be vulnerable, afraid to be irrelevant, afraid to be replaced. And, like many men who live by the code of the streets, he thinks the only way to survive is to control everything and everyone around him. Now contrast that with Jodie. At this point in the film, Jodie has been emotionally reckless, sure, but Rodney's presence triggers something deeper in him, a fear of powerlessness. Suddenly, Jodie's ego is on fire. He's not just trying to protect Ivette, he's trying to protect his manhood, his identity, his place in a world that measures worth by dominance. What follows is a violent confrontation, one that forces Jodie to take a life. And that scene, that's not just cinematic drama, that's a reality check. So many young black men are living like this, constantly walking the line between fear and bravado, between survival and self-destruction. And the scariest part? They have no vision for the future, only a plan for the moment. Jodie didn't want to kill, but he also didn't want to feel weak. And in a world that equates emotion with softness and softness with death, violence becomes the default language. This is what happens when young men aren't taught how to process pain, when they're told to man up instead of heal up, when they're raised to believe that showing vulnerability is a liability, not a strength. Jodie was a killer, but the streets don't care. The streets don't ask if you're ready, they just test you. And here's where the lesson hits hard. Ego without vision is a ticking time bomb. Jodie's ego led him to the edge. His lack of vision for himself, for his family, for his future, almost cost him everything. And this is bigger than just one man. This is about a culture that teaches boys to perform manhood instead of becoming men. How many of you watching have seen this play out? A brother, a cousin, a friend, caught up in violence, not because they were evil, but because they were scared. Scared to be seen, scared to be vulnerable, scared to... What Baby Boy does so well is show us that the streets aren't just about guns and gangs. They're about identity. For so many, it's the only place where they feel powerful, respected, in control. But that power is short-lived, because when ego is driving and vision is absent, you either crash or explode. Rodney's the cautionary tale, Jodie's the near miss, and for those of you watching, especially young men, the question is simple. What are you building that your ego can't destroy? You can't protect your family if you're constantly defending your pride. You can't lead if you're afraid to be seen as soft, and you definitely can't build wealth, legacy, or love while trapped in survival mode. The scene with Rodney isn't just about defending Ivette, it's about Jodie finally confronting the version of manhood he's been avoiding, the violent, impulsive, broken version. And in that moment, Jodie gets a glimpse of what he could become if he doesn't change, if he doesn't choose healing, if he doesn't choose vision. So what's the takeaway? Masculinity without emotional intelligence is dangerous. Ego without a plan is a liability, and survival without purpose is a slow death. Don't just survive the streets, outgrow them, outthink them, and most importantly, outlive them. At this point in the story, Jodie's flaws have been laid bare, emotionally, mentally, and now financially. And this is where Baby Boy hits one of its hardest truths. You can't lead a household if you're economically dependent on everyone else in it. But let's break it down. Jodie is a grown man with no assets, no savings, no real job, and no long-term plan. He lives in his mother's house, eats her food, and uses her space to chase women and hustle t-shirts. While his charm may get him through arguments, his lack of economic contribution leaves him powerless. And here's the key. Power doesn't come from masculinity, it comes from stability. Jodie doesn't own a home, he doesn't pay rent, He doesn't contribute to any meaningful vision. That makes him emotionally reactive, constantly insecure, and quick to deflect blame. And for many of you watching, this dynamic is painfully familiar, whether you've seen it in someone close or experienced it firsthand. When a man is financially dependent on others, especially the women in his life, it changes the power dynamic in the relationship. Love starts to feel like labor, respect turns into resentment, and what should be a partnership becomes a parental role. That's exactly what we see with Ivette. She's not just his girlfriend, she's become his provider. She goes to work while he sleeps. She manages the household while he plays. She raises their son while he stalls in the name of figuring it out. And no matter how much she loves him, the imbalance wears her down, because love without contribution starts to feel like a burden. Jodie thinks hustling t-shirts is enough, but he's not building a business. He's playing a short game. That's the difference between hustling and entrepreneurship. Hustling is reactive. It feeds today. Entrepreneurship is strategic. It builds tomorrow. And here's a deeper problem. Because Jodie lacks money, he also lacks options. He can't move out. He can't support his kids independently. He can't offer Ivette real security. That lack of options breeds frustration, which quickly turns into toxic behavior. The cheating, the gaslighting, Why? Because a man without financial power starts reaching for control in other ways. But yelling louder doesn't make you a leader. Owning your role, building your future, and investing in your home does. This is the core of Jodie's failure. He wants to be seen as a man, but he's not willing to build like one. And the film is clear. Without economic foundation, you can't lead, you can only survive. For the men watching, this is the wake-up call. Your family doesn't need your ego. They need your stability. Love isn't enough without security. Potential means nothing without a plan. And hustling means nothing if you're not building toward freedom. Want to be respected, start by building something they can stand on. Because financial leadership isn't about domination, it's about liberation. By now we've seen that Jodie's struggles aren't just about money, pride, or relationships. They're symptoms of something deeper, trauma. Specifically, unhealed generational trauma that's been passed down, normalized, and recycled. Let's call it what it is. Jodie is his father's shadow. We never meet his biological dad in the movie, but we don't have to. His absence is loud. It's stamped on Jodie's choices, his insecurities, and the way he treats the people around him. From the way he avoids responsibility to the way he runs from emotional intimacy, it's clear. He's repeating patterns he never questioned. And that's the tragedy so many black men face, being shaped by ghosts they never got to confront. Jodie grows up in a household without a consistent male role model, so he never learns how to become one himself. He figures out how to flirt, how to charm, how to defend himself, but no one ever taught him how to stay, how to lead, how to partner, how to love without hurting. He steps into adulthood with no blueprint, only instincts. An instinct, when shaped by trauma, becomes survival mode. But we see it clearly in the way he treats Ivette. Pushing her away, then clinging when she pulls back. The hot and cold behavior, the manipulation, that's not just immaturity, that's a defense mechanism. Jodie doesn't know how to trust fully because he was never taught what real love and accountability look like. And he's not alone. Many of you watching know this cycle firsthand. You've seen fathers disappear. You've seen mothers stretch themselves thin. You've seen boys raised by survival, not strategy, then judged for becoming the very thing they were left to figure out alone. This is where Baby Boy gets painfully real. The family code was broken long before Jodie, but he never tries to fix it. That's the key, because while it's true that trauma isn't your fault, healing is your responsibility, Jodie has moments of awareness, moments when he could take a different path, but instead he defaults to ego, denial, and deflection. And every time he does, the cycle tightens. He becomes the kind of father he claims to resent. Unreliable, emotionally volatile, and unavailable. The scary part? He doesn't even realize it. That's how generational trauma works. It doesn't always look like pain. Sometimes it just looks like how things are. And unless someone breaks that cycle, it just keeps moving from father to son, from son to grandson. And with each generation, it gets harder to untangle. But here's the truth for every man watching. You are not your father, you are not your past, and you are not stuck unless you choose to be. The moment Jodie chooses to stop running, stop blaming, and start building, that's when he steps into manhood. Not when he fights, not when he gets money, but when he chooses healing over history. Because until black men heal, families stay in survival mode. Women carry too much, children grow up with confusion, homes become war zones, and legacy becomes just another dream deferred. If you see yourself in Jodie, this is your call to action. Start doing the inner work. Talk to someone. Learn emotional literacy. Relearn what love is supposed to feel like, because healing doesn't just help you, it frees everyone connected to you. And if you're raising a son, mentoring a young man, or loving a partner who's still figuring it out, be patient, but be honest. The cycle ends when someone decides to end it. And it always starts with a choice. Trauma might be inherited, but healing is a revolution. Be the one who starts it. We've seen the breakdown, Jodie's arrested development, Ivette's emotional weight, the tension between comfort and growth in Jodie's home, the impact of the streets, the weight of financial dependence, and the generational trauma passed down like a family heirloom. But now it's time to ask the most important question. So what's the fix? What does it look like to stop surviving and start rebuilding? The Black Family Code? The answer isn't one thing. It's a mindset, a formula, a commitment to do what the previous generation couldn't or didn't know how to do. It starts with 4 pillars: accountability, healing, discipline, and economics. Let's break it down. 1. Accountability. First, you've got to take full ownership of your role, not just as a man, but as a partner, a father, a leader, a creator. Jodie spent most of the movie blaming everything around him. His upbringing, his mom, Ivette, society, but none of those excuses changed his situation. The moment he took accountability, his entire story started to shift. Because you can't lead if you're still blaming. Leadership starts when you look in the mirror and ask, what am I doing to fix what I didn't cause but still inherited? And so, healing. The next piece is healing. Black men especially have been told for too long to suppress, ignore, or outrun their pain. But unhealed pain becomes behavior, and that behavior destroys families, relationships, and legacies. Healing isn't soft, it's survival, it's strength, it's necessary. And it might look like therapy, mentorship, brotherhood, journaling, or just admitting you've been hurt. Because until you heal, you'll bleed on people who... 3. Discipline. Now, none of this works without discipline, structure, consistency, whether it's in how you manage your money, how you treat your partner, how you raise your kids. Discipline is the muscle that turns promises into patterns. You saw what structure looked like in Melvin. You saw what chaos looked like in Jodie. Which one are you going to model? You don't have to be perfect, but you do have to be intentional. 4. Economics. And of course, the fix doesn't stick unless you control your money, because if you're financially dependent, your legacy is always vulnerable. Look around. Men like Derek Grace II are homeschooling their kids and building family businesses. Platforms like Earn Your Leisure are teaching us how to invest, start companies, build wealth without begging for access. These men aren't blaming the system, they're building outside of it. They're not flexing with chains, they're flexing with assets, trusts, and ownership. Because at the end of the day, economics is how we protect everything else: our health, our time, our families, our peace. Now, let's talk to you directly. If you're a man watching this, you're standing at the same crossroads Jodie was. You can keep repeating the cycle, blaming, stalling, reacting, or you can build your own blueprint, one based on truth, strength, vision, and legacy. That choice is yours. But understand this: growth will feel uncomfortable, healing will require humility, and building will demand discipline. But it's worth it. Because when you rebuild the code, you're not just saving yourself, you're rewriting the future for your kids, your partner, your name. Let Baby Boy be more than a movie you watch. Let it be a message that moves you to act. And remember, comfort feels good, but growth builds legacy. Choose wisely. The next generation is already watching. Let's recap what Baby Boy really taught us. Jodie showed us what happens when a man refuses to grow, emotionally, financially, and spiritually. Yvette reminded us what it looks like to carry a relationship alone, hoping love can survive without partnership. Melvin brought in structure, discipline, and proof that redemption is possible. And Jodie's mother, like so many black women, stood as a symbol of resilience, sacrifice, and the right to choose peace after years of struggle. We saw the consequences of ego, the pain of emotional avoidance, and the trap of building nothing while expecting everything. But we also saw the opportunity, the moment where a man can finally take accountability, choose healing, and start building something worth passing down. And because at its core, Baby Boy wasn't just about Jodie, it was about all of us. Every man who's afraid to grow, every woman tired of waiting, every child caught in the cycle, every family one decision away from breaking free. So here's the challenge. If this hit home for you, don't just watch, act. Drop us a comment below and share the biggest lesson that stuck with you. Subscribe if you're committed to breaking generational cycles and building legacy, and share this with someone who needs to see themselves in this story. Because Baby Boy was a warning, but it can also be your wake-up call. No fluff, just game. This is Wealth Uncut. Let's keep building.